Me, I wonder if I'm again.
And we're live. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. People watching on Facebook, people watching on YouTube, and people watching on Twitter. Welcome to another live edition of the Cheeky Natives. I really like, this space where we're able to have live conversations and have our audience involved. So I really encourage you to, we're going to leave a space open for Q&A at the end. But I encourage you to, make comments, some preliminary thoughts about what your feelings are about the book. We're just waiting for Dr. Ahmed to join us, but I thought in the meantime, let's give the readers an opportunity to, to give Sue her flowers. Or to, be like, Sue, I just need to meet you outside for 2 minutes. Because there was a time, Linda, when I was reading the book where I was like, I think Sue and I just need to talk one-on-one. Hi, Sue. Welcome to the Cheeky Natives.
Hi. Thank you for having me on your platform.
You're not a stranger to the Cheeky
I'm not
Natives.
a stranger, no. I'm a native now.
Yes, definitely. Are you within? And so, yes, so this is an opportunity for you right now to share some thoughts about what you thought about A Family Affair. I want to read just some of the blurbs because I really love like reading blurbs. I want to read about what people have said. So these are praises for A Family Affair. The first one is by Phumla Mutini, who is a broadcaster. Phumla says, "This story has wrapped me around its finger. A warm reading experience. The authenticity of the characters are what endeared me to the most to the tale, a gem." And then we have award-winning author Mputumi Ndabeni, the author of The Broken River Tent, which won the UJ Debut Prize. Think of an African Jane Austen. The clue is in the novel's first sentence, writing a sexed-up depiction of the state of our modern relationships. We're taken by the hand through the coarse ways of our manners, mores, and traditions, the origins and the misuses of our cultural practices, the sometimes misguided appeals to myths, customs, and religion to perpetuate things such as gender violence and the caste system, the lure of money and material wealth as weapons of predatory sexuality and toxic masculinity, the stubborn spirit of religious as the background of so much tragic African thinking, superstitious and all. In short, A Family Affair is a modern soapy with a South African zeitgeist. Not even me, if I just picked up this and I read this, I wanted to be like, what's happening? What is this? Tradition, Mora, perpetuate. And then Karabo Kholeng, who is a writer, broadcaster, and public speaker, says, a contemporary African saga that serves all the ingredients, rags and riches, contested patriarchal legacies, hero women, sacred cross-border alliances, history, sex, the megatrend. Tradition and modernity have been told so well. The green leaves have nothing on the Mafus. This is the Zim that betrays her suffering and otherness imposed by those who are not intimate with her. The trio of the Mafus sisters make the perfect set of jewels of a grand tale. What an epic story, rich in the traditions of Virginia Andrews with the hard-hitting depiction of social facts and romance. So much romance. I mean, I suppose to start here, how do you feel about, how do you feel about these praises? Because you obviously finished the manuscript and you're like, okay, I'm trusting you people to read and give me, shout outs. How did you feel after reading them?
No, I felt happy. It's quite nerve-wracking, I think, when you're on your third book. After the success of The Gold Diggers, you're not sure how it's going to be received.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was quite affirming to get those shout-out quotes. So I was very happy.
And I suppose as a start, right, this is very different from The Gold Diggers, because although The Gold Diggers is partly set in Zim, and people are moving from Zim at that time period into South Africa and find themselves landless and countryless in South Africa in many ways. This book is set in Zimbabwe. Why was that the decision you wanted to make?
I mean, I think this is because, I started writing this book a long, long time ago when I was still living in Zimbabwe. I was in my 20s when I started writing it. So, that is the reason really why it's set in Zimbabwe, because it was I was writing about a certain time period. I was trying to capture a lot of things that I was going through personally at a certain time. And I think as I grew, I kind of revisited the manuscript because I just noticed that a lot of themes that I'd written about initially hadn't changed. So yeah, it's contextually correct to put it in Zim because it's a certain society, certain social constructs that I'm writing about, even though they might be applicable in other countries and in other African societies as well.
Yeah. And what are your hopes, right, for the book, right? Before we get into the nitty gritty, what are the hopes for the book, right? When you finally send that press button and you saw the cover and you saw everything, what are you hoping your readers will get from reading the book?
I really want us to talk about some stuff. I can't wait until a lot of more people have read it and we can actually now start having the conversations. This is meant to be a thought-provoking book. There's certain cultures that we retain and maintain that are problematic, and so I'd like for us to talk about those things. Should we still hold on to them? And there's a lot of other things in the book. So for me, it's to strike up a conversation, and on many conversations that I think are very important. So that was my aim, because there were things that were bothering me, and I wanted to know if they're bothering other people in the same way that they bother me. So yeah.
And in I suppose in the preliminary book conversations that you've had, have you found that people were bothered by the same things that you were bothered? Like the things that you wanted to tease out of the book because you were in a more intimate setting with people who have read the book, that they were really able to come to the table and be like, yo, this and this and this and this, like really picking at those things that you wanted them to pick at.
Yes. So, the ones who have read it are definitely picking up on those things. So I'm quite happy that I did touch those nerves. And so for me, that means, I was successful in what I was trying to do. Because, people say it, they resonate. A lot of parts of the book resonate deeply with them. They say I could have been writing about their own family, their own experiences, and so that really makes me happy that I did.
I mean, Chicken Natives, just to say, we love books, we love reading, and therefore today we'll be giving away 4 books. So we'll be giving 2 books, a family affair. So we will give those ones a little bit later on. But because we love you, we're also giving away 2 Gold Digger books. And I think I'll start the giveaway right now, just to get our bloods going. By asking the first question. So this is in order for you to win a copy of Gold Diggers. And because we also love you, we're going to arrange for that book to be signed personally by the author, Sue Nyathi, and then we will deliver it to you because we love you. Ne? And you're going to have
It's a lot of love.
So the question is this, right? Gold Diggers was longlisted for a South African Literary Award. Which South African literary award was Gold Diggers longlisted for? And I want the full name, ne? Ke batla full name, like ke batla full name. So for that, whoever is going to answer first, the book will go to you. So I'm giving you some time to don't Google, just answer. Don't Google. Okay, so I'll read Sue's bio in the meantime. Just reading from the back of A Family Affair. Sue Nyathi was born and raised in Bulawayo and lives in Johannesburg with her son. Her first novel, The Polygamist, was published in 2012, and her fans will be pleased to know that she's currently writing a sequel. Her best-selling second novel, The Gold Diggers, was published by Pan Macmillan in 2018, and her third book, A Family Affair, is also published by Pan Macmillan. And today we'll be talking about that. So anyone who wants to win Gold Diggers, or must we just keep these books to ourselves? It's fine. Now I'll just ask Sue to sign another copy for me so that we can I can keep them. So let us know. Okay, no one is going once, going twice. Seems no. Sue, may I please ask you in the meantime to read the first page, or page 15 our perfect wedding, from the start until a small intimate one.
Page 50.
15. 15.
15. Oh, 15. From the start to, okay, cool. All right. The reception is held at the iconic Nesbitt Castle, set amidst well-groomed gardens and acres of sprawling manicured lawns. The Gothic-looking castle immediately evokes images of a damsel in distress, imprisoned by a ruthless lord, waiting to be rescued by her knight in shining armor. It is an ethereal setting which forms the perfect backdrop for a garden wedding. Even the weather has complied, and no dark clouds have formed, admonishing any likelihood of a downpour. Uniformed waiters circle the garden serving drinks and pretty hors d'oeuvres, which cause people to complain that there is no real food. A violinist plays music in the background, serenading the guests, while the bridal party are taken to a sequestered spot in the grounds of the venue to capture the iconic moments on camera. Nesbitt Castle is a prestigious venue, and Zandile had fought hard to secure it because her father had wanted to host the wedding at his church, so he could invite the entire congregation. He didn't care too much about the ambiance or the photos. He just wanted the flock of his congregation to witness the momentous occasion. In the end, Zandile won the battle, and they had whittled the invites down to the elders in the church and those who tithed generously. She couldn't have allowed her father to steal her teenage dream. Many nights when they were growing up, Yandisa and her sisters had lain awake at night, planning and plotting their weddings. Yandisa was the one who had always spoken about having a big wedding with 1,000 guests, but Zandile had always wanted a small, intimate one.
Thank you so much for that. Everything just looked like it was opulent, you know. Like I was thinking about Zandile's father as this, like, you know, those black barutis who are like, in black communities, right? We are like, whoa, Elma's house cannot beat us. And Elma's house must know that my daughter is getting married today. So we need to pull out all the stops, the stops. And I felt that was like Zandile's wedding. You know, you're entering this book and you're entering and you're like, yo, it's so lush and it's so
yeah. Kumunati Hakulu. Yeah, and she's the first daughter in the family to get married.
Hey, Mama?
They're keeping up with the Kumalos as well, right? So there's a thing about like how our celebrations are the sites of competition, you know. So if I have a nice grad party, Tlokonolo's grad party must top mine because Tlokonolo can never think that he's better than me. So y'all have to know. If it means we're going to date as a family, we will.
So we asked a question about which South African literary prize was the Gold Diggers long-listed for. And Designer Being says it won the International Dublin Literary Award.
I would be rolling in the money right now, hey?
Look, so that unfortunately is not the right answer. But we're still, the question is as follows. Sue Nyathi's Gold Diggers was long-listed for a South African prize. Which South African literary prize was it long-listed for? So now I want to talk about, I suppose, an overarching theme of patriarchy. I feel there's like this book is sort of, okay. Well, I think we have a winner. So Makopi Reason Maredi says that it's the Sunday Times Literary Award.
Reason has been wanting to win.
Hey?
Reason has been wanting to win, Shane.
So congratulations, Reason. Please send us your details. DM us on wherever you would like to DM us, and then we will make sure that your book is signed. So yes, I wanted to say patriarchy is a very overarching theme in the book. And there are various strands of patriarchy, right? We know the more violent, toxic displays of patriarchy. But there is also benevolent patriarchy that takes place. And I wanted you to speak about the two stratas of patriarchy. Like, why was it important for you to display that it can be benevolent, but it's still harmful in effect?
Yeah, because we exist in this society, right, where patriarchy is a dominant theme. So I wanted to capture the essence of that. And as much as we have toxic patriarchy, we also have the benevolent aspects of patriarchy. And it's important to identify both, because both of these coexist in our world. And so I was just trying to, through the book, reflect that reality through my characters. That this is what we confronted with.
Who was your most difficult character to write in the book? I think Litokonolo and I have our faves. We have the characters that we completely dislike. And I think it's hard to be on the fence about anybody in this book. You just have strong feelings about them. But I really want to know who was the most difficult character for you to write in this book, because this is quite a multi-layered book. It's got different themes as well, but also no one in the book is completely one thing. So no one is completely good, no one is completely bad. They're quite multi-layered and they're quite complex characters. I imagine it's quite difficult to write them. But who was the hardest character for you to write? And do you have a favorite?
I think the hardest character probably to write was Ndaba. Because, I wanted to represent a good man. And because if you ask anyone what a good man is, nobody can tell you. And so for me, I just wanted to capture the essence of what we would consider a good man, and a lot of people think, oh no, Ndabas don't exist. They don't believe, in his goodness, which I think is actually quite tragic, because I'd like to think that there are men like Ndaba that still do exist, and that there are people who exhibit his characteristics. So yeah, for me, that was probably the hardest character to write. Yeah.
I think Litokonolo doesn't agree with you about Ndaba.
Yeah, I don't.
You see. So yeah, so that's the difficulty, because I don't know, is it because people have become so jaded that, because people believe in all the other characters. I mean, there's that Wesley, and everyone agrees that, Wesley was bad news. He was toxic. He's a bad man, but they believe they are Wesleys. But if we can agree, they're baddies like Wesley, why can't we agree that they're good people like Ndaba? So yeah.
But I don't know if I agree that Ndaba was completely good, right?
He wasn't completely good, yeah.
Yeah. And
but
I think that
yeah,
for me, Ndaba was like this benevolent patriarch, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't violent, he wasn't abusive, but Ndaba was still a patriarchal man who lived in a particular society. And in truth, Ndaba, in comparison to all the other men in the book, Ndaba was like a relief, right? It was like, oh my gosh, what a refreshment. But there were moments where I was like, but you see, Ndaba, I see it. You every now and then you just want to show us that you are the man of the household, right?
Yes.
But I suppose that's the authenticity that you wanted to include in the book, right? Ndaba couldn't be unrealistically good, because then we'd have been like, Sue Nyathi is just making up her own things,
Yeah.
Because there's no one that exists like Ndaba, right? And it's interesting, I was reading the book in the beginning, and they said, this marriage is toxic, because Zandile in the beginning, this is what she says about Ndaba. And she's like, I love Ndaba. I love him a lot. He is smart, he's funny, he makes me laugh. I can talk to him about any and everything. He's my best friend. He's very generous and considerate. There's nothing in the world that he wouldn't do for me. He adores me, he spoils me. He pays for everything, even if I have my own money. I have his bank card and I can spend the money on whatever I want. He's protective over me, but he's also very jealous. I see it when I talk to another guy. He won't say anything, but I see how he clenches his jaw and his brow furrows. When we fight, he doesn't scream at the top of his lungs. If anything, I'm the one who starts screaming. I know sometimes I test his patience a lot. He's patient, very patient. He can get mad at me at times, but he doesn't stay mad for long. This is a good because I sulk. He isn't too fussy about a lot of things. He's hardworking, he's ambitious, he will be able to provide well for me. He will be able to give me a good life. He will take care of me. I feel secure with him, and that's a good feeling. I can't imagine being without him. I can't imagine him not being there to share the ups and the downs with life with me. I don't know if that makes him the one, but he is the one for me. And I felt like in that moment when I was meeting Zandile talking about Ndaba, I'm like, Jo, a toxic relationship. But surprisingly, like as the book progresses, it's like, oh, this is a little bit surprising. So this man is not controlling in the way that I think Zandile was saying, he clenches his fist and all that. Like he's actually a good person. So it was the nuance and the authenticity, because if it was completely good, now I would have said Sue Nyathi waka, uwamaka, like Ndaba doesn't.
Also, some of that goodness is also conditional, right? And like you see the ways in which Undaba is in control because he's older.
Yes.
Undaba has the money.
Yes.
It's very easy for him to be gracious and benevolent and understanding. But when the roles turn and he's no longer in the position that he was before, you see him in many ways become obstructive, right? So Undaba suddenly now doesn't understand why there have to be certain geographical decisions that must be made, for example, or certain career decisions that Zandile must make. You actually see the shift even in the way that they communicate, right?
Yes.
And so that also rests on the fact that Undaba was able to be so gracious and kind, because a lot of his personal value rests on the fact that he was the provider, he was older, he could do things for her. So yes, he's good, but I think that a lot of men kind of have to examine the relationship that they have with money and their
power. Yeah.
And power.
No, that's very true. And I think, Ndaba is a reflection of many men in our society. They are a product of that. Although they're benevolent, if those circumstances change, then their benevolence is almost threatened. It can turn,
I mean, I think, Ndaba he was the better of the male characters. I think they were all a bit, but I feel that the character that was most difficult for me to connect with in many ways was the father, right? Because Abraham, in many ways, has done a lot of the things that he judges his children for, that he has very little grace for. But does he not represent the kind of person that we know, even in our community, right? Like, very problematic, just does the most, wakes up one day and has some sort of life-changing event, and then suddenly changes, right? And then continues to hold other people to the standard that they just a few months ago, a few years ago, themselves were unable to, So like there's a thing there about the ways in which I think that he navigated his relationship with his family that also affects the kind of relationships they have with men moving on.
Yes. And if you think about it, there's nothing his children did that he didn't do, but yet, he came with this like gold standard. Okay, so he wasn't empathetic to their struggles, yet he had the very same struggles, and we see that a lot in our parents as well. They forget that they were young as well, that they made mistakes, and they sort of talk down to you from this like high platform of morality. Yet they've also walked that same they've been down that same road, and we have Abraham.
I suppose also it has to do a lot with what I think is another big commentary that you make in the book about the place of religion in our lives, right? Yes. I feel that the high moral ground that Abraham stood on was because of religion, right? So he had met the Lord, he had started this church, and now he is this morally good person who cannot err. And he holds it's a patriarchal religious intersection. It intersects at that point because he doesn't extend the same sort of standard or high standard to his sons than to his daughters. His daughters are sort of placed on like a moral high ground that his sons will never be placed on, right?
True.
And also this religion also emboldens him because he keeps saying, you are my children, what will the church people say? So it's also about him. And I'm wondering like also what the commentary is that you're trying to make about religion, because this man is not necessarily because he is good. It's because, you know, things happened, and then he's like, I found Jesus, and then suddenly he has a
Yeah.
moral high ground.
But I mean, I think if you look at a lot of people who lead churches, they are problematic in many ways. It's just because they occupy the space, they're able to get away with a lot of things. Yet they are leading the flock, they are leading the communities. I mean, we've seen this whole plot, this church thing play out. If you look at the Bushiris of this world, I mean, we have a lot of problematic church leadership. Yet people look up to these people and they look to them for guidance. And so I think religion becomes a very important theme, especially in Africa. I mean, we've had churches long before the Green Days, but they are problematic in the in some of their teachings. They don't necessarily practice what they preach. And so I think we also need to interrogate, church leadership. I mean, no one's above reproach. Yeah. And so Abraham, cast that lens as well, and how it can be problematic, especially when you're growing up as a pastor's daughter. You see the faults of your parents, and they leading. I mean, how does that affect you as a child as well? And yeah.
I'm also really curious, and I think that it was such a timely topic considering that it's 16 years of activism, but there is a strong theme of gender-based violence, intimate partner violence as well, that runs through the book. Why did you think that was an important theme for you to write? But also, why did you write it in the way that you did? What were you hoping to achieve with the way? We obviously don't want to give away too much of the story, but there is an important theme that runs there, just about intimate partner violence, around gender-based violence, and what that looks like for the women in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, our culture also promotes, gender-based violence, and some of the cultural practices. And our religion, also sort of reinforces this whole thing of, hang in there, pray it'll get better, that mentality. And I think in a way it also contributes, to a lot of what happens to people, because you're almost imprisoned by these values that you need to uphold. So that's why I felt I had to tie those three, the three things together, because it's one of the reasons why we have the problems that I think we have. And I think in trying to solve, the end results, we need to go back, and actually start to interrogate some of these things. Even lobola can be problematic as well. That concept of ownership can be problematic. Whilst it's I think the intention was good, but a lot of the things, practices have been corrupted, to serve, people's own personal ends. So that's why for me it was important, because I think it's all interlinked together.
What do you hope that particular theme will do for your readers, right? It's quite a difficult topic. I think it's something that people face in their everyday lives, but I know that there is something that you were hoping to do for your readers in including this topic. What were you hoping for your readers? What do you hope that they'll take away from that?
I think book? A lot of people, you read about it, and I don't think people really realize, just how bad it is. And I think when you introduce a character that people do fall in love with and are invested in, then they start to realize that, okay, people who get killed at the hands of their partners are not, they are human. They've got potential, they've got dreams, they've got aspirations, they've got life in them. And yeah, so I just wanted, people, to realize it's not just, I think we've almost become desensitized because you read about these things so often. But, I just wanted to touch people, that, beyond just, people are not, they're not statistics. It's somebody's sister, it's somebody's daughter. And I think you need to start viewing it that way, yeah. So yeah, it was just to give it, a face, and through, fiction, although it's a fictional account, but it touches you somehow. And that's what I wanted to do, to touch the reader.
I like what you say about like this is not someone's sister and this is not someone's wife, child, whatever. Because I think oftentimes the conversation, particularly when men speak about gender-based violence, and this is cisgender heterosexual men who speak about gender-based violence, often will say to other men, right? Or imagine if this was your sister, right? As if women's lives do not matter outside of men.
Outside of,
As if
yeah.
women are not people outside of men or outside of any connection to men. So I like that you say that, right? The idea that like perhaps we should, you know, what I really like, and I said this on Twitter, is I like the last line of your book, right? Where you say, while the church is there to save souls, it is also there to save lives. That really stuck with me, right? Because I think that it's a conversation around complicity, which I want you to basically just speak a little bit about how, as people who know that certain things are happening to particular people, are complacent, right? And what complicity plays, as well as secrecy, because I think those two things work hand in hand. What the place of complicity and secrecy plays in not saving people's lives, right? Or not ensuring that people are safe or out of dangerous situations.
You know, I think there's that saying, we become complicit in our silence when you don't speak out. Okay, when you see the violence but you look away, or you say it's not my problem. And it's not even just about violence, it's also abuse that happens, you know, whether it's sexual abuse. And this happens a lot in families. Things happen, we look away, okay, it's a secret, it becomes shoved under the rug. We don't deal with things. And, you know, that's what a family affair really is about. It's those wounds, you know, that we don't confront, okay? And we just, like the cover implies, we just put Band-Aid, you know, so it's superficial, just a superficial covering, and we're trying to hold things together, yet things are broken. And we hide behind things. We hide behind our culture, whether we hide behind the church, and it's wrong. We need to stop doing that, because we need to start speaking out, being reproachful to those kind of things when they do happen. Yeah.
Speaking of a culture of silence, I think that the theme of silence and shame runs throughout this whole book. Almost everyone in the book has something that they're keeping secret, has something that they are ashamed of. But I think that the shame particularly comes through in the relationships that the family have with each other, the family members. So I'm thinking particularly the relationship between Yandisa and Babalo, and somehow so much of that is framed by shame and secrecy, right? And how that then also creates the kind of relationship that they're able to have with each other, but also themselves in the future. And I wanted to know if you could just speak to that, right? So the theme of shame, but also that thing that Black families do where we want to keep a facade, right? So like when our children do things, we're ashamed of them, so we keep a facade of like perfection, and so we shame our children into silence.
Yeah. So I mean, if you think about this whole thing of you need to be married to have children. So if you have children out of wedlock, it's a shame, you know, it's a low down, dirty shame. So what do people do? We hide things. So if you're not going to have an abortion, and abortions we actually are illegal in Zimbabwe, what do you do? So you actually then pass off this child as, you know, a child from another member of the family. And this was done. I mean, this is not anything new. I mean, I don't know if you ever watched Downtown Abbey. They also had that same theme, you know, that shame of you know, an unwed mother, you know, having a child. And you see it a lot, you know, kids are hidden. And we are, you know, and those kids then grow up with the shame, you know, they inherit it. And I don't think people realize how damaging that is, you know, growing up with this halo of shame over your head. And so that's Babala's character explores that, and a lot of what happened to her, you know, could have been avoided. You know, if people, you know, if we went, let's stop being ashamed. It is what it is at times, and I think we need to start being honest, because there's this whole thing of perfection, like you speak of, Alma, that we love to project perfection, but nobody is perfect, and there are no perfect families. And yeah, it's a reality since long, time immemorial. If you think of the Bible, the first family we meet, Cain kills Abel. I mean, how dysfunctional is that? So.
I mean, so we.
I wanted.
Okay, go for it. Sorry.
So I wanted to explore this topic of shame in another context, right? I think that shame also permeates in the relationship of women in the family in ways that are often very violent, right? And very exclusionary. So the women in the book do not extend grace to each other, right? And my least favorite person, Ndaba, like I love him, but my least favorite person in the book, Sisintombi. I hate Sisintombi. Like I hate Sisintombi. Like I just want to get I like
grace to a woman in the book. Yeah, not like you say they don't extend grace. You're also not extending grace to Sisintombi.
So I want to speak about that. I want to speak about the idea of shame and this lack of extension of grace, right? Particularly to women in the book, in the family.
Yeah, but
sorry.
Yeah.
Can I because I think that it was interesting that she chose to include those rakadis because the aunts in older women in Black families are typically vilified for a lot of reasons, right? So because you're speaking about grace, but it's also because there's no uncle. Your uncle is usually just a problem child, a problem case, so he can't ever be relied upon to be the one who's strict or shying text, etc. So of course he can be nice and light, but typically older women get vilified, and I feel like it's a running trend in our community. So this is why older Black women will get murdered because they are accused of being witches, etc., etc., etc. There's a thing about the ways in which our community views older Black women. It's either that or you're stuck in the mammy role. So you must nurture everyone, you must look after everyone's children. You can just never have rules, right? And I want to counter the idea that yes, they are problematic, but there's also problematic gaze that we use to look at older Black women. There's something about Urakadi that doesn't exist for Umalume, even though Umalume is very problematic and he's the one Ohlalalwela izindlu zakubo.
Yeah, I think there are two ways to look at Usis Ndombi, right? I mean, Usis Ndombi is also a product of her environment. I mean, we always talk of women being agents of patriarchy, and she was. I mean, I think she served patriarchy well, and I think she thought what she was doing was right. I mean, in most instances, like for instance, if you think of her big reveal about the boys, was she wrong? I mean, people have been debating that she could have chosen a better way, but did she have to choose? I mean, Abraham could have actually done it himself. Do you get what I'm saying? Why are we hating on her when Abraham and Phumla could have actually done the same thing earlier? Do you get what I'm saying? So at times, I think we must also think: Are we being harsh because we consider, like almost saying that these aunties are a problem, or maybe she did mean well, I mean, she did show gratitude and towards the boys when they were growing up, more than anyone else in the family. So, she did show latitude towards them. So as well. So, is it because it's the view that we have that Orahadi are always troublemakers? I mean, on the other hand, Lucis Lungile was, more warm, and people, prefer her because she was, more empathetic, and sort of loving towards Yandisa. So yeah, I think it also depends on, how you look at her and the way she, she also conducted herself.
I want to say that I think one of the things that didn't make me enjoy Sisintombi's character, which I think is a brilliant thing, right? I don't think we have to enjoy every character that we read about. And the mark of a good book is that there must be some people who infuriate you, right?
Yeah.
And Sisintombi for me made me angry because she had a lot of she was contradictory in many senses, right? So on the one hand, she's showing latitude and she's kind, but she's also someone who, as you say, is an agent of patriarchy, also holds very highly to respectability. Right? She's like the type of person who's policing literally everyone, how everyone is dressed, what everyone is doing, why everyone is doing this, right? And I wanted to know if, like, Amma and I were having this conversation about, like, perhaps also Sis Ntombi, as a product of her time, was also like pushing back to the freedom that she wasn't afforded, right?
Yeah.
So her respectability was sort of not coming from a bad place, but it was also, I didn't have these freedoms, and in my time this would be shunned upon and things could have happened to you. So I wanted to speak a little bit about that, like her respectability as a way to think about like the place in which she found herself.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that bully in high school. It's that child, not that child who's bullied in high school when they're in Form 1. And when they're in Form 6, they do the very same thing. They start bullying children. It's like you literally, just doing what was done to you without giving any thought. So it's like, this is the system. This is how I found it. We don't need to change it. I'm just inheriting it. And I think it happens a lot in our culture. We just inherit things, without, thinking of, how problematic they are. And I think, Sis Ntombi was, typical example.
But there are navigations that women have to make in order to survive the society that they find themselves in. And often respectability is one of the ways in which women have to survive. I think that like the way that I'm able to navigate a space is not the way that my mother can navigate a space, is not the way that my grandmother would navigate a space. And I think that there is a danger in us being the kind of feminists who may criticize choices in the absence of being in the positions that sort of compel people to make certain decisions, which is not to say that it's great. I think Sis Ntombi is problematic, but I think that she's problematic in the same way that like Undaba can be problematic as well. Undaba is a child, but everybody's, oh my God, Ndaba, take me now. Do you know what I mean? But he's problematic. Ndaba's low-key high-key problematic as well, but everyone's like, oh, Ndaba, but it's like the life that we make for men, like it's a kind of space that is given to men. And I think if there was anything that I took from a family affair was that we need to have such wider places for the women in our lives, right? It's like softer landing spaces for the women in our lives is a real thing. And I think of the relationships between the sisters. I'm struck by the relationship between the sisters. Those girls had an interesting sisterhood, potentially because I don't have a sister, so I always find the relationships between sisters interesting. But if we could talk a little bit about their relationship, because a lot of them really behaved like their typical birth order. Like Xoliswa behaves like the oldest, Yandisa really behaves like a child. They all sort of fall into that birth order thing, but there's a way about the way in which they navigate their relationship, which is also beautiful.
Yeah, so I actually don't have, for a longest time, I didn't have a sister. So with my younger sister, there's like a 15-year age gap between us. So for the longest time, I was the middle child, and then I had an older brother and a younger brother. So I didn't grow up in that kind of family setup, but I was a middle child. And I think we often, as middle child, we get ignored, I think, and you're often left to your own devices. So and the older child, or they always act like a parent, like your deputy parent. And younger child, the last borns are usually pampered. So yeah, and I think most families sort of follow that. But it's not like a hard and fast rule. So I kind of modeled the sisters on that. And I think, for me, what was important was, the sibling relationship is a complicated one. It's often fraught with jealousy and, but there's love as well. And I also wanted to reflect that even with the fighting and the tensions, there's that love and, coming together. So for me, that was also important to reflect in their relationship. Yeah. So I don't know if I captured it well. But yeah, it's.
I didn't have a sister, but I was convinced, so I guess.
I also really liked the way that you wrote all the sisters in many ways, right? I felt that you also gave them like agency in a way that lots of us don't give people agencies in writing. Particularly, it was effectively their story, even though it was about the Mafus, it was their story. They were the sort of main protagonist of this family, right? And we see life through them. I mean, you think about Xoliswa, for instance, right? Fierce, career woman, slaying, yes, 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 right? And has everything going for her, right? But her Xoliswa in her excellence, right, is always going to be seen as not being good enough because according to society, in order for you to have reached a certain status in life, you must be
Married,
married.
yeah.
You know, and that's a beautiful commentary that you made to be like, here is this person who has done all these amazing things and all these successful things, but in the eyes of people who potentially matter to her a lot, these things don't mean anything because she's not married.
Yeah,
And
I think
yeah,
society has a harsh indictment on successful unmarried women. And I just wanted to tell that story through her eyes. Yeah. And the pressures. I mean, she probably did more for her family than anyone else. But because of that, she always fell short somehow.
And her father's trashy. I just want to note that her father's trashy. No, it's true, right? Because there's a thing about like inheritance and men feeling like, the son is the heir. So there's all this like endless faith in ways that your daughter would not, because of the way that men think of progeny and like, inheritance. And I think that there's an important commentary that was made there. And I'm really glad things ended for Abraham the way that they did, because there's a thing, no, it's true, he deserved it. There's a thing about like how...
I feel like you said this about, what was his name? Dumisani in the Gold Diggers.
Trashy men deserve nothing, basically. And that's my take home from this. But I mean, a graceful conversation is the idea of like inheritance, right? Because there are still places where women can't inherit things. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's a real thing there about like men's ideas of progeny and inheritance. And this is why your uncle, who has never worked in his life, has never even bought isinkwa for his family, right? Has been content to sell everyone's spoons and live their best lives. He's the one who can come and demand things related to the family home, for example, because there's ideas of inheritance and progeny, and the idea that your boy holds so much more value and weight in terms of inheritance than your daughter, and all of the assumptions about competence and who can do what that come with that. So what I'm trying to say is Abraham deserved everything that came to him, and he's trashy. But also, what I wanted to it's true. What I wanted to talk about, I really didn't like Abraham. I'm sorry. I also want to talk about relationships, right? There's a thing you're talking about Xoliswa. I mean, Xoliswa she's engaged in a relationship that a lot of people would frown upon, right? But it's working for her, right? So this thing about like respectability, being unmarried, monogamy, but also having these be the same people who remind you that you're young, you should be in a relationship. So you're shamed for being single, unwed, and having a child, but you're also shamed for not being in a relationship. And you're doing this interesting dance, right? And I want to talk about the unconventional romantic relationships in this book and what you were trying to get across in their portrayal.
So for me, it wasn't like I wasn't like saying, okay, people should, be with married men or anything. But I think it's more of owning your choices, whatever they may be. I think that was the message, that, your choices might not necessarily be conventional choices, but you still need to own them, whatever they are, So, that was, her relationship. I mean, it's not like she didn't try. She tried. People will say, put yourself out there. She did put herself out there. I mean,
and men will let you down. Men will let you down. Okay, let me tell you.
Deserve nothing.
And the thing is, she was happy, right? So, was it a bad thing? Was it really bad that she was happy with this man, and she was happy with the way things were? And so sometimes it's just about being able to stand up and own the choices that you make, and be able to stand by them, whether they deemed right or wrong.
I want to talk about Yandisa and Zandile, but I want to start to talk about Yandisa. I don't know, like what are your feelings about like Yandisa is that character that you love to hate. So like I loved Yandisa because everyone was like treating her a particular type of way, and I'm like, net for that thing, I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to love her, and I'm going to love her just for this person. But then there were moments where I was like, man, Yandi man, hi man, now like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you this person? But I suppose also we think about like Yandisa considered the black sheep of the family. And in many ways, being considered the black sheep of the family sort of propels people to act in the way that people expect them to act, right? So Yandisa for me was like that. It's like, even if Yandisa wanted to make certain decisions, Yandisa was like, they expect me to do this, so I'm just going to do it in any way, right? And I wanted to have a commentary about that, about like how in many ways, the way that our family portrays us is how we walk in that portrayal, not because we want to, but because we want to say, just for that thing, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, it's that whole thing, if you don't know yourself, people will then tell you who you are. They'll tell you what you are. And you end up playing up to that, subconsciously. You live up to those expectations. And
I think so.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, carry on.
No.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Yandisa, and like, everyone has a problem relative or problem child, but nobody ever bothers to know what the backstory is. So Yandisa has a lot of trauma when she's growing up, trauma that's not accounted for because of the ways in which families want to negotiate those kinds of things, right? And then she gets branded and she gets labeled a traumatic, like a bad apple. So even when she does things, there's no grace for her, there's no space to understand. People have just already decided, Utswena, you're just a rubbish, you're a bad child. And how often does that happen to people in our families? That you are, we are palo. That's it. Yeah. There's no negotiation, there's no support, there's no understanding.
Yeah, it's true. Nobody ever stopped to ask, like, but why is someone acting out? Let's try and get to the root of the problem. People just look at the symptoms and then they think, oh, she's just a troubled child. So Yandisa didn't get a lot of latitude from her family. And she craved love and affection. And then she meets someone like Wesley. And then you think, oh, okay, this is love, this is affection. And yeah. And so that became the trajectory of her life. I mean, what? Yeah. Imagine if Yandisa had been with Ndaba, how different her life might have been.
And that's what I was thinking about, right? I was thinking just about, like, in many instances, like, Yandisa's life could have turned substantially different if, she had met someone kind and someone loving in the way that Wesley was not. Because as much as, and I felt like there was also a commentary about the idea of, like, I mean, I often have a conversation about loneliness makes us do things that we wouldn't ordinarily do if we were not lonely. And I felt Yandisa's loneliness manifested in a Wesley, right? So as you say, Yandisa really craved love. And at that particular moment, there was a Wesley, right? Who Wesley was also fighting his own demons, fighting his own demons. And then these people sort of collided with each other. And they built a nest around loneliness and thought it was love.
And the toxicness, in the relationship.
Wesley,
Wesley really udinga ukushaywa, like really udinga isibhaxi nje, because wow. But I just find like the men in this book. Just like.
But we know the men in this book. We see them every day.
That is the worst thing, is that we know the men in this book, and it's sad that, like, you could read this book and transplant it to so many of our communities, right? The protection of men that we know to be abusive, right? The double moral standards that we hold men and women to, the allowances that we give male children to, because everybody knows that male children are allowed to just go find themselves, bamosh, and then still come back and be allowed to just head entire households. But the breadth for women to make mistakes is tiny. You just you will be labeled for the rest of your life as a failure, which I think is what happened to Yandisa, right? That she had this thing happen to her, she was labeled as a failure, and there was just never any room ever given to her. So even when she made mistakes, she just felt worthless, right? So yes, there's a loneliness there, but there's also a worthlessness that other people have projected to you that you internalize when you are seen to be a problem, non-perfect African girl child.
Yeah. So when she gets married, she has achieved. And suddenly, it's a different kind of, story. Oh, the bad girl's gone good, So that was another, aspect.
Yeah, and I hated the fact that her family suddenly, got some respect for her because she was no longer spoiled goods in the way that they made her spoiled goods. Like and it felt like some petty in many ways, right? At least someone can marry Uyandisa. And I didn't like that. I didn't like even that the union was tied with this idea of, oh, thank you, someone at least in the world is going to love Uyandisa. Because I felt that like they failed her in many respects. And even in those instances, they failed.
Yeah, it's that whole thing. It goes back to that whole damaged goods that, once you have a child out of wedlock, you've got this dark cloud over your head. And if you can achieve marriage, even with that dark cloud over your head. I mean, I've seen that commentary. I remember someone even on Twitter said, this woman, a cousin has like 5 kids with 5 different men, and she got married, like, and he's like, how she actually did that, and I only have 2, and I'm not married. So yeah, society is very judgmental, and so when people, because it's that whole damages, and then she's damaged goods, and so when someone like that gets married, it's like a big deal. And I think it's wrong. That whole concept of damages and damaged goods is wrong. It demeans people.
I want to talk about Zandile.
They have 5 kids everywhere that they don't maintain. Like, there's a thing there that just needs to be examined, right? Like, now at your funeral, you don't have certainty, right? Like, you can answer with certainty about your mother's children, but your father's children, it's always like in pencil, because you don't know at the funeral who's going to turn up that looks like your siblings. You don't know.
Yeah.
Also, that looks exactly like one of your siblings, right? Because this is what happens when men deny their children when they show up. Copy, photocopy. It doesn't even look like you just like you don't even need a paternity test. You already know that this belongs to my father. Yeah. That's what happens with me.
And at every funeral, you're just like welcoming. You're not sure. So it's like it's a big reveal. And when there isn't anything, people are relieved, like, yo, okay. Yeah.
I want to talk about Zandile because I really like Zandile. Mm-hmm. And when Zandile was like, nah, I have dreams. I want to live out my dreams. I'm like, Zandile, please, yes. Because I feel like often women like Zandile who get married at a very young age, whose men are well off, who are well taken care of, they sort of become Ndaba's wife, Mang's children, Mang's mother. They never become Zandile, who was an architectural student who was top of her class. They never become those people, right? So you sort of like, let's forget that this person existed, has a life before that. And I felt that there was a lot of reclaiming that you were doing when that particular moment happened, right? Outside of the economic difficulty. There was also a thing, even before the economical difficulty, where Zandile was like, but what about what I want, right? Because I often feel that like a part of our dreams, particularly women in marriages, sort of just morph into the wife and never become an independent party to a marriage. The husband is given the latitude to do whatever they want, but the wife is not.
Yeah.
No, it's true. And often when the wife is not given the latitude, it's often told, but what do you need? I'm providing for everything, as if your dreams, right, can be sustained and can be hushed by I'm providing for everything.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people would have probably thought, Zandile was foolish, running out of a marriage like that. She had everything. I mean, what more could she possibly want? But sometimes wanting to find yourself and wanting to be something beyond being someone's wife and the mother of someone's children is not enough. And, so she wanted to seek that other part of her and reclaim it. And a lot of people I've seen who get married young just become morphed into their husbands. It's my husband this, my husband that. Who are you? outside of that, you're being a mother and a husband, so that was for her the missing piece. And sometimes, sometimes, people are lucky and they do find themselves in marriage, and sometimes people aren't, and they just become blurred in marriage. So that was something else that I wanted to explore with Zandile's character.
I think you also really explored interestingly what it means, I guess, for Zimbabweans outside of the country, right? So the kind of navigations that they have to make, because we know that there's an economic crisis, but I think that people have sort of just become almost blasé to it because it's been happening for such a long while. But you see in the book how often people's fates turn, right? It's like you have people who are prosperous and who are not prosperous suddenly because of the economic states of the country, and there's a commentary that you make there about the kind of navigations that young Zimbabwean professionals have to make in leaving their home for these other countries, but also what it means to leave home and be away from everything that's happening, right?
Yeah, and it's just a recurring theme. So although whilst, the whole economic thing and the political thing is not at the forefront, it just plays in the background. And I didn't want to center it too much because that wasn't the story, but it's there. And I also wanted to show that even with everything, the turmoil and the turbulence of the political and economic instability, life still happens, People fall in love, they get married, people move, and that's just life. It never stops. It keeps going. I remember someone was saying, whilst Mandela was in prison, Thabo Mbeki was living his best life in the UK. And I'm thinking, but what did people want him to do? To pause. People carried on living. They carried on, and that's what happens. Even at the worst of times, people still get married and have children. And I just wanted to show that life never stops. It never just keeps moving.
I mean, we could go on all night speaking about like the complex stories of the book, but we will have a separate conversation in a podcast where we can do all of our in-depth, because there's some things that we don't want to give away in this platform because we want you to enjoy the book and come back to us and tell us how you feel. So we're going to stop our conversation here. Thank you very much, Sue, for joining us today and for entertaining us. Like I often feel when we read novels, it feels like these people. Like I feel like I know them, and I'm so interested and keen in their lives. So thank you for making this story so feel so real. Like these people are people that we know.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. I want it to be very relatable. I hope you saw yourselves in some of the characters, but not too much.
Now I didn't see myself. Now it's like, please separate me. Although I might be like Xoliswa and then ish.
Yeah.
And then what? And what?
I'm just saying nothing. I'm not saying
If you make the Chokonalo character in your next book, I see he wants to be in some entanglement.
Well, write him in.
The polygamous sequel, I want to be there.
No, I'll write you in. I actually need to talk to you about something.
Okay. Oh, definitely. Please hit me up. I wanted to speak about a looming question that I had when I was reading the book, right? And the looming question was, James Baldwin often says that when he writes, he doesn't think of an audience, right? He's like, it would be absurd for a writer to write and think like they're writing for a particular audience. But I was really interested to find out if when you were writing Gold Diggers, whether there was an audience that you had in mind, right? And I asked this question on the back of, I read the book as a Black person in Southern Africa. And in many instances, I believe that you write about me and for me and to me, right? And then I'm like, okay, but why did Sue have to explain like lobola, for instance, right? Or something, because I know these things, right? And that's where the question emanates from, right? Whether there was a particular audience that you had in mind, or what are some of the editorial and narrative decisions that you made in writing the book?
So there were some cultural practices that I thought I wanted to explain for interest's sake. Okay, not necessarily because I was trying to cater to a certain.
The battery.
Yeah, I need to try. Yeah, I'm trying to look for the cable. Okay.
The questions are coming. I see Reason is like, hi Borg. Question, please. Reason is so eager to win a family affair.
Can you see me?
You already won.
Okay. Yeah. So I was saying there were certain things I wanted to explain culturally. For I was just thinking, just to give context in case some people don't understand. But that was also, because it's rich in culture as well. So I just wanted to go, a bit deep into what our culture's like and just showcase some of the things that are done and why they're done. And it was also to give, context to other readers who might not be familiar with Nguni culture. And so there were also a lot of Nguni, the Nguni language weaved into the text. And I know there were complaints that I should have provided like a glossary because some people didn't understand what it means, but I just felt people could infer meaning.
But glossary, glossary.
Yeah, but look, I was against the glossary and no one insisted anyway. I feel there's certain things that do get lost in translation. Like I was explaining to you, there's a line in the book when they're at Zandile's 30th birthday and they're celebrating and someone says, that was a play on the name and so I don't even know how you translate that. So it's one of those things, if you know, if you don't know, well, but there's certain things that you can't translate.
Yeah.
But,
English
from the context.
So like laughter.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. Can you please ask one question for people to win one family affair? Because you're definitely on mute.
If you want to win, I get it. This is Sue's third book, so I want to throw it back to her.
Reason. I hope you are already typing. You don't even know the answer, but type please. This is for you.
I get it. Okay, so I want to know what is the name of Sue's first novel, and I want you to name a character from this novel. So name of the novel and name a character. Otherwise, I'll win, Nishim.
That's an easy one.
Yeah, you see, nobody's winning. Anyways, but I want to say, Sue, I really enjoyed the Tabata, a family affair. We will dig deeper into the Tabata because, we can't. She says Batung. Batung is not the answer. Reason Batung is not the answer. I always love this competition part of the book session because it's so hilarious, how people get competitive about this. Answer the question, what is the name of Sue's first novel and name a character? Okay. Yeah. Reason? Yes. The Sue's first novel is a polygamist. Name a character. Okay. We have someone from
it's so easy.
From YouTube.
Oleda.
Yeah. So congratulations. Please DM us your details, address, telephone number.
Wait, I'm happy with this. Sue, are you happy with her to say Madima or do you want? Are you happy? Before
she said what?
She chose
the polygamous Madima.
Yeah, I'm fine.
No, it's not. It's not is that the vendor version? Okay, give it.
No. Okay. No,
because it wasn't Madima.
So Reason said the polygamist and says Joyce. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, but Reason has already won. You can't win twice.
She won the gold diggers. So, Alma.
Some people are a bunch of winners.
Okay,
it's fine. We'll give it to you.
Reason,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Guys, we get happy when Serena's winning everything.
Okay.
Congratulations, Reason.
We'll let it go.
You have won the book. Please, can you send us your details for both the books that you've won and stop playing now? Thank you. Give other people.
I have another question that might be easier.
Is this for the gold diggers or for a family affair?
For the gold diggers.
Cool.
So I want them to give me a roundabout of the year in which the gold diggers is set in and what important crisis was happening around that time.
Okay, so that's the question. What year is gold diggers set in? And name an important event that was occurring during that time.
I even made it easy, an important crisis, difficult time that was occurring.
Come on, people. Come on. A bunch of winners. Let's make it happen. Okay. Kolelwe, I think this is your time to shine. Come on. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, answer. What year was the gold digger set in? Yeah. Alma, you're on mute.
What crisis was occurring? Don't leave my question out, please.
No, I'm saying what important event was occurring. And when about crisis. So please, guys. I know the answer. Can I enter?
No, Chemi, you can't enter. Friends and family cannot enter.
Yeah. No, you're a native. No.
So we're just waiting for one more person. Winner, a bunch of winner. Reason you can't enter again. You cannot enter again. Reason you can't enter again. You have won both books. You cannot enter again. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Any new people? James from Kenya, you can enter.
How, guys? This is
Actually, I don't know if James can enter, but you know what? I don't know if James should enter.
Can't enter.
James is a native.
Hi, James. Thanks for listening.
Alma, are you happy?
Yes.
Alliston October says 2008, an economic crisis meltdown in Zim.
I am very happy with that. Is the author happy with that?
Very happy. Yeah.
Cool. Congratulations. Can you please DM us your name, telephone number, and your address, and then we will get and the name you would like to get signed on the book, and we will ensure to get it off to you as soon as possible. Okay, one final question to win the gold diggers. Jojo, I just want to make people laugh. So Harold says it was 2017, Durban, July.
No.
No, Harold is looking because there's laughing faces. So the one question that I have is that Sue has a master's degree in something, right? And are people already answering? Oh, I was like, yo. Oh, this is like finally, good God. Two people want to win books. So Sue has a master's degree in a particular field of studies. What field of study is that, and what occupation does Sue work? James says, I'll leave it for the bunch of winners and sends their greeting. Hello, Sue.
But why did James put that emoji? It's so passive aggressive. Like,
okay.
You have to like that smiley face.
Oh, Reason is lying. Reason are economics, not screaming. That's a lie. Sue does not have a master's in economics.
No.
Wrong.
Reason, bye-bye. Bye-bye, Reason.
Bye, Reason. Good night.
Okay. Okay. So there's an answer. Finance. Are we happy with finance?
Yeah, we'll take it.
Okay, congratulations. It seems the two winners tonight have each won both your books, Sue. So that we have 2 winners tonight. They've each won a pair of your book. Congratulations to both of them. Please DM us. I'm just saying, I don't know if we should be running competitions anymore, Alma, because it's getting a little bit competitive out here. You see, people are like,
No,
finally.
guys, competition is good. Competition is healthy. I'm here for it. Compete for books, not boys.
So before we go, we just wanted to find out if anyone has like some final a question or some final comments for Sue before we let each other go on this fine Tuesday evening. Marara is not enjoying it. Arahaibo, guys. Mara, you know the thing is, it's the quickest fingers on the hands, you know. So that's what we need to do. Oh, Harold Arisu was in broadcasting.
Sorry?
Harold says you were in broadcasting. That's the masters you have.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So I don't see anyone who has any questions, but we want to give you your flowers, Sue, and say, I think we echo the sentiments of Desiree and Martin, who says, Sue Nyathi is a powerful literary force. A family affair exquisitely captures the complexity of family, culture, and the societal construct that surround women, eloquent, evocative, and utterly engrossing. And I think that's it. Like, I think that in many ways, this like the book was so ordinary in talking about our lives that was what was magical, that our lives in their ordinary sense are important. It wasn't extravagant or like there somewhere where we couldn't relate to it. It was right here. But even in that ordinary, that our lives mean that we matter.
Thank you. We all matter. Black lives matter. African lives matter.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sue, for just writing about our lives, right? I think there's a thing about the ways in which often Black people's lives have to be either a tale of triumph, we have to be making political statements. We're not allowed to just live, right, and just exist in that space. And there's just something so powerful about having our families written about as interesting sides of study, as interesting sides for literature that is actually so revolutionary in the ways that it goes against what white supremacy would like us to believe about Blackness being monolithic, about the Black experience being monolithic, but also the Black experience not being worthy of documentation unless we're fighting racism or
yeah, we always burdened with, you know, these other heavy themes, yet we also have our own struggles as Black people that we should be tackling. And so that's what a family affair is about, you know, just bringing it home.
Yeah. There is a question from Maduduzo Sibanda, who says, what advice would you give someone working on their debut novel?
I always say your first draft is not your final draft. Don't resist the temptation to want to, you know, go and get the first draft published. You know, yeah, work on it. Leave it for a while, let it simmer and stew. And yeah, keep refining it. Yeah.
And also, I suppose, give it to readers who are going to critique the work, right? And not the person, because often when we give it to other people, they'll be like, oh yeah, it's fine. But you also want someone to say, but this plausibly doesn't work in your plot, or this doesn't make sense in your plot. But revise.
I mean, I think of the first manuscript of this book that I wrote, and I compare it to, you know, the last, and how, you know, I've grown as a writer and how my writing has become more refined over the years. So sometimes, you know, we shouldn't rush to get things published. Sometimes it's worth, you know, just investing in that time and letting something stew. I think there's always a rush to put out something, and sometimes it doesn't serve us well as well. But yeah, get other readers to look at it, get constructive criticism, and learn from it as well. You know, and I think also try and get your, like, I know self-publishing is big, and that's fine. I mean, my debut novel was self-published, but also invest in an editor. And an editor is not just someone who's there to do, you know, spell check and, you know, sentence and grammar construction. they're also there to look at the story arcs development, and that's so important as well. When you're writing. So I think also undermine the role of editors when it comes to books.
Please, I just want to say, as a literary critic, and I think Alma may share these sentiments, sometimes bad editing takes away from a really good story. And so you're so annoyed by fixing the errors as you're going along that you end up not enjoying the book for its fullness. So good editing really helps the story. It's really important for you to have good editing.
Yeah, I remember reading. I actually read a brilliant book a few months ago. I won't say what the title is, but there was a huge structural error in the book in terms of the time that the person was referring to and the description of the time. And I felt like something that the editor could have picked up. I mean, someone's talking about a place in the 80s, but they're describing it like it's in 2020. And that just went past somebody's eye unseen. So for me, things like that need to be picked up in the editing process. So even now, I always get these questions, but why were they drinking vodka? And I'm saying, well, the book begins in the early 2000s. Gin wasn't big then. You also need to be true to the norms of the time that you're writing. Yeah. So vodka was the thing then. So it's always kind of, you need to be true to the time that you're also writing in. So research is important.
Thank you very much, Sue, for gracing us with your presence. We'll definitely schedule an offline, lengthier, more juicier podcast conversation for people who can participate in it once they've read the book. You've already bound yourself to a sequel, so we already are looking forward to the sequel, even though we haven't enjoyed A Family Affair in as much, but you've already told us that you are writing a sequel. So
I'm writing a sequel to The Polygamist.
Yes, but I'm saying we already know you're working on a next book. So we are looking forward to that book already.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I get the name as buy this book from the Cheeky Bookers. Buy this book so you can get a sequel. Because if you don't buy this book, how do you get a sequel?
Christmas presents, you need to get for your loved ones. Yeah, family time, Christmas. Yeah.
A book is an everyday kind of present, like birthday, break up, get together, new job, new life.
So two things before we go. One, because we love you at the Cheeky Merchant, if you have not won a book, you can still get a signed copy from the Cheeky Merchant. So just visit our website. We will type it on the platform so that you're able to visit it. We visit our website and we will deliver the book. And the second thing is that A Family Affair has a soundtrack or a playlist accompanying with it on Spotify. So if Sue just wants to tell us a little bit about that before we sign off, because I was like, this must have a soundtrack, and Sue was like, yes, there's a playlist that you can listen to.
Yeah, so I really went to pains to compile this playlist. So every chapter has a song that goes with it. So yeah.
And you can get it on Spotify.
It's on Spotify,
Yeah. So let's make it happen. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate it. We having our next event. One will be on Sunday. We will release details as soon as possible. But we're also really excited that next Tuesday we'll be in conversation with Zoe Mudicha about her album. So please come and join us next week. We'll also put information out on our social media pages. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers. Good night.